try. So I think you can hear me correctly. There's a lot of feedback. So I'm Paul Hubert from Amadeus, and we're going to talk about one specific part of the infrastructure which has to do with analytics. Now, to introduce the business, I'm going to explain you first. The first part is about Amadeus in general. Then I will focus a bit more on storage within Amadeus, and then I will go straight to this analytic problem we are trying to sort out. So you heard basically Amadeus is what Booking.com is for hotel, Amadeus is for airlines. And in both cases, we are mainly a European company. We are based, our data center is, the main data center is based in Munich, and we have our main development center in France, south of France, Nice. So let's go through some facts. Some of you who are as old as me are familiar with this screen. You do remember how it was like 30 years ago when you wanted to fly. You needed to go to a travel agency, physical one. You needed to speak with physical people. And basically, if you went to a travel agency, it was for good. You wanted to fly somewhere. And so the person was in front of his terminal. And basically, you said, you know, I'm in Munich. I want to fly to San Francisco for the next cool summit. And so what are the possibilities? So whether you take a direct flight or you have a, you know, you can go through some other airports like London, Frankfurt, whatever. And so this process is called availability. So you mean what it means between from where you start and the destination, you look at the different possibilities that are making sense. Obviously, from Munich to San Francisco, you can go via Tokyo, but it doesn't make sense. Okay, so this availability consists of exploring an array and looking at fares, and for a specific booking class, for a specific day, you look at the solutions. So you are familiar a bit with those acronyms, those are airport acronyms. I think most of them, you know what it means. What is interesting is that, you know, when you do an availability 30 years ago, the look-to-book ratio, meaning how many requests you're going to do for one booking. As I said, because you went to a travel agency for good, because you wanted to fly, the look-to-book ratio was 4:1. So the travel agent was doing 4 availability to end up with 1 booking. This has changed, and I will go through this. Just for your information, you know, I just read this before. You know, we exchange information with the airlines to get inventory information regarding, you know, the status of a specific booking class for a specific flight. And we use a protocol which is called TTY Type B. I don't know if you are familiar with this one, TTY Type B. And I just read that this year, this protocol is actually 100 years old. It was a protocol developed in 1919 when the first airplane flew in the US, and they needed via the telegraph to have a protocol or a type of message to exchange information. So we still use in the industry a protocol which is 100 years old. Now it's obviously embedded into XML or whatever, but the protocol is the same. Okay, so you know, green screen, some of you remember. Nowadays, obviously, we use whether a browser or we use your smartphone to do those availability. And you can imagine that I mean, you know how you work, and the young generation, I would say it's even more extreme. You spend a lot of time searching for flight and possibly book. And we have a graph, and I'm going to go through it. So you see on the X, you have the years. So we start in 2011, and it goes to 2019. And on the Y, it's the number of availability requests. And you can see that in 2011, we were doing almost 600,000 availability at peak time per second, obviously. And you can see that now, at peak time, we are at 15.2 million availability requests per second, okay? So you can see the growth, which is basically the result that we spend more and more time searching, shopping, and possibly book a ticket. And the growth is 40% per year. 40% is a lot. The airline industry, the number of flights possibility is only increasing by 5% every year. So while we sell 5% potentially more seats per year, we need to grow our capacity to help the shopping by 40%. And the shopping, you do it for free, okay? And us, we get money back from the airline based on bookings, not based on availability. So we need to provide a cool availability, something that makes you interested to buy the ticket, but this for free, just to make sure that at the end you buy the ticket and we get a fee out of this booking. I told you 30 years ago, look to book was 4-to-1. In 2011, it was already 25,000 for one booking. Where are we now? Any guess? We need to process 600,000 availability for one booking, okay? You have to imagine how many hours you spend searching, and when you go to a website, even if you put a specific date, the website is going to give you possibilities for 3 days in the past and 3 days afterwards. Yeah. So that's why we end up with all those availability requests. And also what is interesting, you can see, it's not too obvious, but you can see that you have some small drops and some peaks. And that reflects the activity over the year, and you have patterns. So typically, where we sell the least airplane tickets, it's in December. But do you know when we have at least, not in sale, not really, but in terms of availability, when is the peak in terms of availability? Every year it's the same pattern. Do you have any idea? Which day we have the highest peak in terms of processing of availability? So you don't know. I tell you, it's the first weekend after 1st of January. You have to look what you do yourself. You sit with your partner and you start to think what I'm going to do during the year for vacation. And that's where we have the peak. And it's not a small peak, it's like 30% more. And 30% on something where the availability processing is 70 to 80% of our computing global power. So if you increase this by 30%, it's really demanding. Okay, let's go a bit faster. You can see Amadeus, like in terms of IT, with 2 different parts. You have the system of record and system of engagement. The system of engagement is what I described you. It's this shopping, So we try to give you a good experience so you end up with a booking. The booking, and then inventory system, departure control system, I will explain. This is something which is which only grows by 5% every year. And this is something that has to be extremely consistent, because you talk about booking. So when you book and we give you a booking code, you want to make sure that the booking is not lost and really the seat we gave you is really allocated. So while system of record are using traditional RDBMS engines, typically Oracle, the system of engagement, because of the problem of scalability, we use NoSQL and eventually consistent database, because what matters is the scalability. By the way, do you have any idea how many people fly every year? I mean, the number of people flying, tickets sold, because sometimes those are the same people flying. Do you have any idea? So I give you a tip. It's as many as hotel bookings. So you don't know? So last year it was 3.6 billion. Okay, worldwide, 3.6 people. The system worldwide issued 3.6 billion tickets. Another interesting figure, do you know how many people are currently sitting in an airplane at 10,000 meters? So, no idea. So it's 1.5 million. So worldwide, somehow, all 24/7, you have 1.5 million people not touching the ground, basically. And those figures are supposed to double every 15 years. At least that's what the pattern was so far. OK, so I did describe, that was a quick overview of the business of Amadeus. And now I go to some details regarding storage solutions we use. And I do a bit of history. So, as I said, we have two systems, a system of record, which is about bookings, inventory, departure control system, so where you want consistency, and a system of engagement, where it's about scalability. So 10 years ago, our shopping was not as demanding as it is now. So we used mainly technologies to guarantee consistency. So we had a NoLTP stack, and it was a traditional Oracle SAN environment. And for the application, we were, VMware was running with nice appliances. And backup, we were going at the end to tapes. And what we have done over the years is that we developed, in addition, an environment using NoSQL for our system of engagement, as I said, to be able to scale, mainly using Couchbase and MongoDB, while the storage, in that case, is local, using Flash technology. We also developed big data, because the idea was that that's a new currency, and we need to develop new business with all the data we consolidate. And we started also to investigate time on Object Store as a concept to treat documents as objects and not always putting those documents, typically in a boarding pass, an invoice. Why you would put this into an Oracle database? It's better to try to use a different form of storage, which is more economical and less complex. So you can see that over those 5 years, we doubled sort of our complexity. We still maintain the environment for OLTP processing, application with VMware, backup, and we had to additionally deal with NoSQL, big data, and Object Store. But that would have been too easy if we would have stopped there. And basically, on top of what we already discussed, we had to evolve this infrastructure. And we now more have a solution which favors latency, or favor throughput, or favor the problematic of archive. So some people call it SDS. For me, software is everywhere, also on a sort of legacy appliance. So our problematic is more to adapt to whether you talk about latency or throughput. And where the complexity comes is that you have to deal with your on-prem problem with different technologies. And more, you have also to understand what the cloud offers and use the cloud when it makes sense, or also be able to explain to your organization that what you do is at least as good compared to what the cloud can do. So, bottom line, what I wanted to say is that despite all the knowledge we accumulated over the years, with all the experience, it's always evolving, changing, and we have to adapt. And the latest development we are working on, it's about Kubernetes, this CSI interface, where we have a POC ongoing to understand the value proposition. We are working a lot on offering, we have a large tape infrastructure, and the goal is to allow people to use this infrastructure through an S3 interface, like Amazon Glacier. We are looking at NVMe over Fabric for low latency transport. And more and more, we have also the need to have the solution, a service approach, where we talk about quality of service, chargeback, availability, durability, a bit like the cloud is doing. Now, this slide is also important because so far I explained the aspect from a technical perspective. But when you work with vendors, it's not just talking about figures, performance, but it's also establishing a relation. And you know, this relation is really critical because it will never be an off-the-shelf solution that you download the software, you install it, and voila, it's all done. It never works like this. So you need to establish this strong relation with the vendor, and also you need to develop contracts where you have a possibility to grow, but growing is difficult, but sometimes you have to shrink, and that's even worse. So in those contracts, you have to have the possibility to evolve. You have also to protect yourself against the possibility that your vendor is going to disappear. It happens. You know, we were unfortunate that we were a big customer of Tintri, of Mapar, and you know what happened to those companies. So to protect ourselves, you know, we have to have those escrow contracts. I think you know what I mean. So we are sure that in case this company disappears, at least we can access the source code and possibly take over the execution. So this statement is from the CIO of Lufthansa, and it fits exactly with our problematic. It's a technical challenge, and it's also a relational journey we have to have with the vendor. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the use case related to analytic. I'm going to speak about Splunk. So I'm sure you are familiar with Splunk. Splunk is an analytic software which, for us, helps us to do operational mining. You have to know that Amadeus, you know, we have this. I mentioned this shopping. This shopping means we receive a lot of requests, and those requests, they are interesting, potentially, because it gives us some information of what the people are looking for, how they search. Now, how to exploit this information? And especially, just to tell you, the shopping in terms of logging, we log the messages that are coming and we log the answer. This represents per day 3 petabytes of data. And we don't keep everything. So we have to consolidate those 3 petabytes of data into a platform which we can exploit to mine the data. And on top, we need to keep an history of what has happened. So it's a lot of data, and it's a big infrastructure, big pipes, and a lot of machinery behind in order to support this. So in a nutshell, how it works, well, Splunk is basically what it does, it's going to index the data you receive. And to index, where we have an army of servers, we have roughly 400 servers, bare metal, that have local flash cards, like 15 terabytes per server. And we receive the data, and Splunk indexes them automatically and compress the data at the same time. And that's why you need this flash technology, because there's a lot of I/O. Now, to make the infrastructure cost-effective, we can only keep the data 2 days, because we cannot put flash everywhere. Flash has a certain cost. You are familiar. And that's why we move the data after 2 days to an object store. The object store is based on hard disk drive. And hard disk drive, the cost per gigabyte is far lower than for flash. Now, it's not as performant in terms of I/O. So we needed to work a lot with Scality, which is our provider for the object store, to tune the Scality object store cluster to be able to support this massive ingest, despite we use sort of low-cost hardware. So I give some figures. In this POC platform, we ingest 10 million logs per second that we store, index, compress. And then after 2 days, we move the data to the object store, where the data are on top, protected using Erasure coding. And you can see that for these 10 million logs, what it means is we have to sustain at peak time 20 gigabytes, not bit, byte per second ingest. And I mentioned the specs. We use standard HP, in that case, those are HP servers with 24 large form factor disk drive. So the cost effectiveness is a big problem because of the scale of the platform. And so far, let's say it's quite difficult when you have to deploy such a large environment, which costs something, to justify or to ask the people internally to pay for it, because it's not something we can charge back easily. The end users, the customer, which are the airlines, all airlines are obviously interested by insights of the data, but when it has to pay for the service, that's a bit more difficult. So I just mentioned a few discussions which are ongoing about this cost effectiveness. Currently, we use hard disk drives because it's the cheapest online media. And if we would use flash, even if you use QLC, you still have a factor at least of 5. Now, another aspect which is important also to consider is that the price of the x86 servers, and understanding that the hard disk drives are getting bigger on a yearly basis, understanding that the price of the x86 server goes down and the capacity of the disk is increasing, you have also to have a cycle of your hardware that are short-term. Don't try to be try to keep your hardware more than a couple years. I mean, currently we keep them 5 years, but the idea is to keep them only 3 years to be able to benefit of that. What we observe is that every 3 years, basically the price of the hardware going down and the capacity increasing, we have a factor 4 compared to 3 years before. So it's important that we are able to keep up and let's say keep the pace of innovation on the hardware front. Now, one of the difficulties when you use hard disk drive is that despite the capacity does increase, the number of I/Os an hard disk drive can support is the same. And so to finish, I want to show you an evolution we are planning on this platform. Currently, we are only keeping the data 10 days, but it's not enough. And the idea is to extend the capacity, is to move the data after 10 days to what we call a frozen storage, which is basically a tape infrastructure. Tape costs nothing in terms of storage compared to hard disk drive. And if you look at the data, it will first end up on NVMe, where most of the time the queries are, especially when the people look for incidents, they end up on the 2 last days of data. So in that case, they are served with NVMe infrastructure. Later on, the idea is to go to an object store, could be QLC, because of we think QLC at some stage will be cost-effective enough to compete with hard disk drive. And then we go to tape via an S3 interface. OK, that was it. So if you want to know more, I'm available for questions. I've got to see also one colleague with me who is more on the technical side, and I can give you much more insight on what we have done. Thank you.